In many of the conversations that I've had with people on this podcast, we've talked about the ups and the downs of becoming parents. One of the things that we don't spend enough time acknowledging and respecting is the grief that can accompany a process, especially when the whole journey takes years and years to come to fruition. Today, I'm honored to have Anna and Catherine join me as they talk about a program that they've launched in Toronto to help queer people navigate some of their own emotions surrounding the grief as it comes with family creation. Welcome to the Becoming Baby Ready podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. Welcome, everyone. Today, I'm really excited to have a conversation with a pair of professionals who come to the show from a slightly different perspective. Insofar as typically when you join this show, you hear me talking to parents who have created a family of their dreams, and we talk about how they went about that process. But often what you'll hear throughout the conversations is people talking about the ups and the downs through the journey. And today I'm speaking with Anna and Catherine, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the downs and navigating some of the downs. So without further ado, welcome to the two of you. I really appreciate you both being here and offering some realistic and honest perspective to this whole rainbow colored journey that we have, because we all want to see it with rose colored glasses on, and we want to see it as the vision of perfection that we dream of all of our lives. Would you please start this whole long conversation that I've just been, a long-winded introduction I've done. Please tell us who you are and what you do so that we can get this conversation going.
Anna, you want to take it?
Sure. So my name is Anna, and what do? I do a lot of things. In my, I guess, career life, I work primarily as a behavior analyst for adults who have intellectual and developmental disabilities, things like autism, Down syndrome, etc. Consulting and providing staff and caregiver training on how to manage challenging behaviors. And then I also have a degree in professional classical singing. And I have done some professional work in various choirs and touring Europe and stuff like that. Right now, I sing in a semi-professional choir in Toronto, and I just can't ever be without music and art in my life. So that's a little bit about me. I don't know if you need anything else.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Well, I guess it's my turn then. Yeah. So my name is Catherine. I also do many things, similar to Anna. So I'm an expressive arts therapist in private practice. And within my private practice, I specialize in perinatal mental health. So at any, I mean, I really could call it reproductive mental health. It's really at any stage of like people thinking about if they want to build a family, if they do end up building a family, if they don't end up building a family. And I'm also a mixed media artist. So work a lot in community in both of those capacities, very often working in nonprofit organizations, delivering groups and sometimes individual sessions, and also just continuing to try to expand my own artistic practice and exhibit my work. Yeah.
What are we coming together today to talk about? You both bring these very diverse backgrounds to
Mhm.
a truly complex piece of the reproductive and family building journey. Can we dive
Mhm.
in a little bit to that and what that means and where you're coming to this from?
Mhm. Yeah, what brought us together?
Yeah, what brought us together, Catherine? So yeah, I guess I'll start. I am a queer person who has I embarked on a family building journey. I do now have a 4 year old, but it took us 3 very long years to achieve that. Um, in a nutshell, 10 IUIs and 5 rounds of IVF. Lots of failed transfers, a miscarriage, until we were finally able to conceive. So it was a very long and painful journey.
Yeah.
And when I was in that journey, I for the up until the tail end of it, where we found the planting the seed support group and realized there were other people out there also doing this and we weren't all alone. Most of our journey was very lonely, very isolating, because there's so much loss that happens along the way. Every failed IUI, every time a sperm donor isn't available or they're sold out, every time you do an egg retrieval and that it doesn't work or you don't get anything, or just so many things. And then of course the big one was the miscarriage that I experienced at 7 months, and how profound that grief was. And I felt like there wasn't a place for it. Even talking to my friends who were not queer and who had experienced miscarriages, and they'd try and be comforting and say, oh, it's okay, you can just keep trying. And it was very hard to keep repeating, actually, I can't keep trying. There's two uteruses at home. There's no sperm. Like, it's not that easy. Keep
Yeah.
trying means thousands of dollars, means appointments, means lots of other things that they couldn't even conceive of. So it was hard to find people that could relate to that profoundness of that grief.
Yeah.
And because I am, a musician and an artist, and I've dabbled in all other kinds of arts, one way that I helped myself through that process was um, trying to make that grief tangible through art and through other things. In my choir, every time, I sing a lot of Renaissance music, so it's very like church style lyrics, but there's lots of stuff in there about, the baby being born and or then dying, and the mother's grief, and there's all these themes that all of humanity can relate to. And so
Right.
I'd be singing those lyrics and I would relate it back to my own experience of losing my own child at 7 weeks pregnant. And so I channel my grief into that kind of art. And then I would also do things like write poetry, or we even created this little ceremony for the baby that we lost. The app that tells you how big your baby is,
Right.
what size fruit it is every week. And
Yeah.
so at 7 weeks, the app told us that it was a raspberry. So we actually got a bunch of raspberries and we went down to the lake one day and we had candles and incense and we did this little ritual. And we just one by one, me and my wife threw these raspberries into the lake, while sobbing. And it was very dramatic. There was like wind whipping around us and the candle wouldn't stay on. And it was kind of ridiculous, but also something that we needed to do to make that grief and that goodbye tangible.
Right.
And then I wrote about it and I drew about it and all this stuff. So anyway, so I realized how helpful that was for me. And so I thought to myself, what if we could create a space like this for other people going through similar kinds of grief? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a miscarriage. And so that's how the Here Hold My Grief project was kind of born in my mind.
Right.
Was I had just had this idea, that there must be other people out there who are isolated, who are grieving any kind of loss on the journey. Even for myself, coming out as a queer person later in life and realizing I'd spent my whole childhood thinking that I'm going to marry a man with a white picket fence and the 2.5 children, and even grieving the loss of that way of creating a family is a huge grief that
Sure.
I'm sure a lot of other queer people out there also experience. The sperm donor you want not being available, that's another grief. So we thought, what if we created this space where people experiencing any kind of grief along the family building journey could come together, um, and process those feelings and witness them in themselves and in each other through art. And so that's kind of how the idea was born. And then, of course, we had to figure out how to make it reality. And that's where Catherine came in. So, Catherine, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I guess so. So I was connected to Anna because we have a colleague in common, Gab Griffith, who also works at Birthmark. And we got connected because I had worked with Gab in the capacity of providing perinatal mental health trainings to nonprofit organizations, previously through a nonprofit that I co-founded, and then afterwards just independently in my private practice. Um, and they just knew that I often work within an expressive arts capacity and that I had done a lot of work in nonprofit organizations around just using arts and community-based practice, whether that's therapy or not therapy or sort of anywhere in between. And I just got really excited to meet Anna. I mean, it's always an honor whenever somebody says, like, I know someone you should work with. Her name's Catherine. And I'm like, me? It's
Yes.
always still just a little bit shocking to me. But I think our first conversation, it just felt like it just felt like a yes. Like I was like leaning in the whole time, like in
Right.
terms of what the group was going to be about and really what it was trying to capture. I mean, I think my only moments were in realizing my own positionality. So I um I have gotten pregnant naturally twice. I have two like born healthy children that I raise. I also had my children within a very like cis hetero sort of appearing relationship, even
Right.
though individually, like I do identify as queer, but certainly entering into those family building spaces, it was like me and my husband, like
Yeah.
walking into the doctor's office. And also I'm white. I'm very much a settler, a white settler to this land.
Hmm.
And so there was a lot of privilege that I experienced within my family building experience. So I always want to be really cognizant of that when people want to collaborate with me in terms of just naming that positionality.
Hmm.
But one of the things that's been really important to me is looking at the grief and the experiences that are dismissed or erased or disenfranchised or put on the margins, because a lot of my work in nonprofit organizations, even if I'm not there to deliver any services around perinatal mental health, I'm often working in organizations where there's majority female identifying folks.
Hmm.
And people will say, like, oh, well, that's not really something we need here because, like, there's no kids. And I'm
Right.
like, mm, can I just fact check that for you for a second? Because I'm pretty sure you have a building full of people who have uteruses and potentially who don't have uteruses and might also be experiencing some grief around that in
Hmm.
terms of female identifying and also potentially not having a uterus. Or, you know, I was finding myself in situations where I was like, do you know how many children in this building have been apprehended? Do you know how many people here have children who are in kinship care? Do you have any notion of how many people here might have had losses or chosen abortions or like been talked into not having children? Like because of the complexity of those situations, you know, when you're working in shelters, transitional housing units, it just is striking to me like the lack of awareness around just because there are no children present, it means there also
Mhm.
is no grief or struggle present and
Right.
no perinatal experience. And I think that was so when Anna was speaking to me specifically about running this group, like specifically for that disenfranchised, like that marginalized grief of being on this journey and not yet having a child to take care of, like all that stuff just is nails a yes for me because there's so much of that in society that we just ignore. We're looking for like, oh, you have a baby now. Like now I can connect with you about this process.
Right.
But
The
people are
happy
going through this for years. And even if they're not going through it, like how do you nobody can comprehend the nuanced, minute, dismissed moments in somebody's journey, but we're only looking at those sort of major milestones, like you got pregnant. That's a major milestone. Or,
Right.
you got a surrogate. That's a major milestone. Or you got approved for an adoption, right? But that only tells like a tiny little piece of the story. So I just got
100%.
very excited. And then because it was arts based, I'm always in because that's who I am. And we've been very lucky to partner with other artists as well who are bringing in an incredible amount of skill and perspective and who also themselves have personal connection to the themes. Whether even if they're not on a family building journey, all of our artists identify as queer and so would have like a notion of like, yes, there would be just flat out systemic barriers that they would
Mhm.
confront if they did choose to build a family. So I feel like we created like a beautiful little community, not just of participants, but
Mhm.
also of artists. Yeah, so
Totally.
that's how we
And
met. That's the long version of how
yeah.
we met. Here we
Well, and
are.
just to add to that, like Catherine, when the first time we met and I started trying to explain this idea in my mind, in my heart, and you just got it. And I was like,
Yeah,
yes, like I don't need to keep talking. Like I know Catherine's the person. Like you just got it. You understood the nuances of what I was really trying to make a space for, which
right.
was, and it relates back to our title here, hold my grief. It's this thing.
Mm,
It should be, it's so invisible, this disenfranchised grief that you were talking about, and you just got it right away. And I was like, yes, this,
yeah.
we're gonna make this happen.
Yeah, it was very exciting. It was definitely very exciting. There was like a click for sure. And then Anna's like, well, I do some voice stuff. Like you were very humble about your artistic experience at first. I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah. Yeah.
You
But I get that.
together, you bring it all to the table as a collaboration there. Can you give a sense of now you, as we're recording this, you're halfway through this program. My guess is that just even from having the two of you describe how it all came together and how it lights you up to know that this is an offering that's out there, my guess is that this is not the last time that this program is going to run. I foresee seeing this out there on an ongoing basis. But can you give it an overview as to sort of what what happens? What is the, like we have an idea. This is a space for people to come and to learn how
Mhm,
to navigate their grief in the best way possible for them.
mhm.
But beyond that, what is it? What are they coming in and doing?
Hmm.
Mm.
Good question. It's different every week.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah,
I'll give maybe a general overview, and then Catherine, you can speak more to like the
sure.
art pieces of it. But so I every week we have a different artist coming in, and then either myself or Catherine are also there just to give continuity to the project. And then the same participants come every week. We will be adding some new folks in the last three sessions. And we started off by just everyone briefly sharing, why they were there, what brought them to the project, as much or as little of their personal family building story that they were comfortable with.
Mhm,
And then we explore through art. So it's not really a sit down talking support group kind of thing.
Okay.
It's let's figure out how to get these emotions out of our bodies or feel them in our bodies and create with them, express with them, and have them be witnessed by other people through these different arts modalities rather than through just sitting down and talking.
Right.
mhm.
Right.
Yeah, and there's been a really beautiful arch to it. I think there's always synchronicity. Every time I'm like honored enough to get, so there's funding also that supports this. Like we managed to get, we were approved for funding by the Ontario Arts Council because they have an artist engaging community stream in particular that's looking for projects like this that want to work in community, specifically with folks as like co-collaborators but guided by artists and exploring a particular theme or working with a particular population. And anytime I've had the chance to sort of work in this way, where there's also other artists coming on board, it's always really exciting to see the synchronicity that happens within that. So the very first group Anna and I did together, where Anna brought in a beautiful story. Is it Inanna, the descent of Inanna? Is that how you
Yeah,
pronounce her name?
yeah, it's an
Yeah.
ancient Sumerian myth.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then we sort of talked about there was like some breathing. And then the basis of most of my mixed media work is collage. And so I just led participants through a way to sort of explore what the form or the potential texture of their grief might be and where it lives in their bodies. And then allow those forms, colors, textures to dictate the images that they chose out of magazines and sort of create a collage with them and then ask questions of the sort of collage in terms of like prompting or writing. And then the next session, we had an incredible artist, Jessica Watkins, who did movement, writing prompts. Um, and then we have another artist, Pre, who came in and did zines. And then we have another art, and Pre's actually going to do two so that folks can explore the zines a little bit further. But folks could bring the writing that they had expressed with Jess and then use those in the zines. And then Pre will
Oh.
sort of work with that. And then the last artist that we have coming in before Anna and I go back in is an artist named Mabe Kyle, and they're going to be doing collaborative poetry making. So
Mm.
potentially using some of the zines to like create poetry phrases and then collaborating on a poem. And then Anna and I will come back in and Anna will facilitate sort of a voice-based workshop. So the beautiful synchronicity has been that each of the workshops can sort of carry over into the next one in terms of people having something that they can start from, like something that's like a starting point for them for the next time, which has been really lovely in terms of realizing that there's an interconnection between each of the workshops. And that really just happened quite synchronistically. But yeah, it's
Mhm.
a little bit different each time, but it's really about, like Anna said, like how to make something tangible that's intangible, but in a way that's not, it doesn't have to be obvious. Like nobody, it's for the person who's creating it. Like it's really for the person who's creating it to say this is representative for me. Not that like anybody who picks up their zine would be like, clearly I know what this is talking about. So it's being able to also find ways to express through symbol, through metaphor, through representation, through sensory experience, rather than needing to be able to talk it out, like
Hmm.
process it only from a verbal perspective, because that can get a little bit tiring for folks sometimes when they're just
Mhm.
talking about it over and over and over again, which
Yeah.
isn't to say that participants aren't sharing pieces of their story, but it's to say that they don't have to give it like they don't have to give us the details that they don't want to give. They don't have to share the parts that don't feel comfortable. They're very much sharing based on what's coming up for them, like through the process of art making, and that's guiding a lot of the conversations and also guiding how the participants are connecting to each other too, even though they might have very different experiences or be in a very different process, that they can connect through the themes that are emerging or even
Right.
like a symbol than that more than one person is using. Um, yeah, rather than needing to like talk process things. Yeah. So that's sort of what it looks like. And then there is in this round. And then we are going to be going into what we're calling stage 2, which is sort of a little bit different than the 6 workshop format as well. So that'll be starting in March, which I can go into detail about if that's of interest, or Anna can sort of also speak to what the idea for the phase 1, phase 2, and what that sort of came from. Uh,
Sure.
Anna.
I would love to know more about that, especially because the intention is for this to air before that kicks off. And is there
Mhm.
still space in stage two for people who might be interested or
I think so. So stage two has always been very nebulous for both Catherine and I.
okay.
We knew there needed to be
Beautifully nebulous.
we knew there needed to be a stage two. Um, so stage one is really about exploring these different mediums, right? Writing and collaging and movement and all these things. And then phase two is okay. We knew that it would be something that would be co-created between the artists and the individual participants. And we couldn't prescribe what that was in advance because it would depend on who ended up coming, right? Both
Sure.
artists and participants. And so the idea is to um, co-create something, potentially weaving in elements of all of the things that we've already explored together, into something that can be either presented or spoken or shown. All of the above are on the table, to a broader community. And our goal is to have something that we can take to the to us LGBTQ plus family building symposium happening on April
19th.
I want to say the
19th.
19th. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. And we don't know what that's going to look like yet, whether it's going to be, something visual or people speaking on a panel about the experience or presenting some of their written work. It's something we want to kind of co-create together. But to answer your question, there definitely is space for other folks who are interested in this, who are in a similar journey. So on a family building journey, have experienced grief of any kind and don't have a child yet, or don't have a child or have ended up without a child, to, figure out how we can have them participate in some way. So we already have two individuals who are not local to Toronto who were really interested, but just weren't able to make the commute for the in-person workshops. So those two folks, we have summaries of what we did after each workshop. So I've been sending the summaries and saying, hey, if you want to do this stuff at home, it's not the same as doing it in community and being witnessed,
Sure.
but it's something.
Yeah.
And so sort of, keeping the stuff in their minds or on the radar for them, keeping them in the loop, I guess is what I want to say. And then, seeing what phase two turns into and how we could bring in those people who are remote. Because at the end of the day, it's such a small, niche population, right? You know,
Yeah.
queer, and then on a family building journey, and then I who don't have a child yet. So it's a small percentage of people, but there's also a lot of people out there that are spread out all over Ontario and potentially all over Canada that, you know, we wanna embrace them into this project in some way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
did I capture it correctly, Catherine?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, when you said nebulous, like it's funny to call it that, but really that is what it is, it's a bit of a call and response. Like here's these calls we've put out and here's the responses we're receiving. And when Anna's been sending out summaries, it's been going to all of the artists as well. So all of the artists know like what themes were coming up in the last one, what the process was, what's the thing, like if there's a tangible thing that people can bring back. All of our participants have a journal so that they can keep writing. If there's any writing prompts, it's all in the same journal. So it's really a gathering of experience, gathering of themes. And yeah, I think there is something beautiful to, and I would say too, like the way that like the Ontario Arts Council funding also is looking at this is that they want a co-creation. I think it's very often like we can say, okay, we're going to explore, not that there's anything wrong with this, but like we're going to explore this theme through this process, and here's the 5 steps you go through to create this thing.
Right.
Like there are like beautiful programs that are very curated, curriculumed, sorted out. That's not what we were interested in, particularly because when grief is so disenfranchised, like it is nebulous, like because it doesn't have a place in the world, it often doesn't have a place in us either. It's still
Right.
nebulous. And so there's something about saying like, let's visit the nebulous together and figure out what kind of shape it has. And leaving that open for co-creation, and also like equalizing, I think very often it's like, well, the artist is going to sort of teach me. Like the artists are not there to teach, we're there to just guide and then listen, like in terms of what's happening. Yeah, so nebulous for sure, but but exciting, because then it does offer like beautiful opportunity in terms of something being formed by everyone together, and having potentially components of that that could come from people who haven't been meeting in person, but that there would still be a really clear way that people can participate, or like a clear invitation
Right.
of what that might look like. So yeah, I think it's exciting. I also think it's something that, people often aren't used to, when you're like, we don't know what it's going to look like yet, but
Yeah,
if you
right.
want to come along for the ride, come along. I mean, thankfully our participants are very excited by that. And also like the folks who want to participate who are not able to come in person, like thankfully there's an excitement around that mystery, but it can also be really uncomfortable
Yeah.
to sort of hold that mystery. But also, when you're looking at who it is that, when you're looking at the type of grief that we're trying to support as well, like what a what a beautiful mirroring of just living in a mystery. Like,
Mhm.
I was
each
gonna
of our
say that.
participants is living in a mystery of like not knowing, like if they will build a family, when they will build a family, how they might end up building a family. So there also is something that I think will be quite beautiful coming out of phase two, in terms of saying it's a mystery to all of us. How do we like approach a very nebulous, mysterious thing,
Yep.
and trust that it will concretize into some form that might be completely unexpected. So I do think that there's a really magical sort of mirroring that can also happen in that process, and potentially be reflected on as well. It's also a way that I've worked in the past, and I've watched people be like, I don't know what's happening. And I'm like, give it 10 minutes. 10
It'll
minutes.
happen. You'll
You'll
know.
see. It'll happen.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it takes a certain amount of willingness and like readiness for people to be like, sure, I have no idea what's going to happen,
I
but
have
I'm
faith.
here for it. But they do know what they've been exploring. They know what they've been exploring in the 6 weeks. They know the themes that
Right.
are coming up. They know the things that are like the most crunchy for them, that they're really keep coming back to this thing that's like grabbing the most of their attention. So they know that there's space in whatever phase two ends up being
Right.
for those things to like be carried forward. But we do definitely want to have something that's witnessed. I think that's the
Yes.
piece,
Yeah.
that witnessed piece. Like we want to we yeah, because it's very much an invisible grief for so many people. So
Right.
important to make something of it visible, even if it um isn't like narrating the story of someone's experience.
Hmm.
Hold on for just a moment. We'll be right back. You know you want to start a family, but you're really not sure where to start, what questions to ask, who is your best person to connect with. Well, I would say that the best person to connect with is Sam from Baby Ready. We have connections and resources, answers to questions, and we have been helping support families for over 25 years. So when you are looking to start the process of creating the family of your dreams, look no further than Baby Ready. You can learn more about the services we offer and the places you can meet us in person at www.babyready.info.
And I do think we just need more. I mean, generally, when you look at like queer family building, when you look at grief and loss, when you look at like marginalized reproductive experiences, there's just not enough in the world where people can see themselves in it. Like
Yeah.
all of the apps are cis hetero.
Yeah.
All of the most of the advertisements for fertility clinics tend to lean towards more cis hetero. Like they're already not seeing themselves in that, in the world of like family building
Yep.
in general. And I'm sure you've spoken to many people about this on your podcast, that like having something that's tangible that can be shared, even if it is representational or metaphoric, it feels like it also just increases the visibility of
Mhm.
this kind of experience a lot more. I think people just don't like, even just changing somebody's perspective of being like, oh yeah, I never thought about like what it would be like to go through 5 years of trying to build a family and then needing to accept and alchemize and digest not having a child. Like, even for one person to be like, holy crap, I never
Yep.
Yeah.
for a second thought of that, like then that's worth it to just like shift a perspective a little bit.
Absolutely. Catherine, you're like saying all the words that are in my soul. So I feel like there's nothing else to add. But I did want to say, that that is the ultimate idea behind having the phase two culminate in something that occurs at the symposium
Mhm.
is because our symposium, we did it last year for the first time. It was the inaugural one, and it was beautiful and it was fantastic. um, and it was a place where there was a lot of stories about here was my path to a family, and now here's my family and the happy ending. And there, I
Mm,
find that on this journey in general, there isn't a space to be, you know, somebody that wants to be a parent and that isn't one yet, right?
mhm,
It's either you're a parent or you're not a parent. But especially in queer family building, that is not the case. There are all those of us, I mean, I'm not there anymore, but that exist in this space, this liminal space, right?
Mhm.
It's like you're in your heart, you are a parent, you just don't have a physical child, or in your
mhm,
heart you wanted to be a parent and you may not ever be one.
mhm,
And having that story and that experience in some way highlighted and accentuated at the
mhm,
symposium for witnessing by all kinds of community care providers and community members who may be experiencing the same thing, I think is like the ultimate goal,
yeah.
is making that story a real tangible part of all the other stories and just as valid.
Mhm.
We
Yeah,
all
there's a lot
want to
of
be
assumptions.
seen at some point, don't we? Like,
Yeah.
because that
Yeah.
makes it feel like we're not alone.
Mm-hmm. Or even makes it feel like your experience exists at all,
Right.
Yes.
right? Like I think
Yeah.
Yes.
so much about, there are so many, and this has come up in our with our group too, in terms of the participants, where like a couple participants have talked about just the pain of the realization that you want a family. Like nobody talks about that. Like
Hmm.
growing up gay in a small town, you're like, well, there goes my
Hmm.
whole idea of a family. And so even like the process of re-embracing and giving yourself permission to have that desire can also be painful and can also have grief, because then you're also confronted with like, well, now I want this thing. How? Like, what are
Hmm.
my options for that? And I think the other thing we also, or a lot of what I'm often going on, like experiences of hearing assumptions from other people, right? Like the assumption that in a women's shelter, there's no perinatal mental health issues because there's no children, right? And so even just this, I think for society to sort of check its assumptions of like, if a same-sex female identifying couple doesn't have a child, they must have chosen to be childless. Like, or well,
Hmm.
there's a male gay couple and they don't have kids, they must just be loving their freedom. Like we make those assumptions and they exist everywhere, and the amount that gets completely erased in that um, is astounding to me, in terms of like that couple could have just had two surrogacies that failed. You don't know that.
Hmm.
You don't know
Hmm.
that. That couple may have taken out a second mortgage on their house in order to like finance IVF. Like you don't know that.
Yeah.
So, and I do think that there's often those assumptions of the happy ending too. And then we define what a happy ending looks like instead of asking people to define that for us, in terms of like, what
Mhm.
would your happy ending be? Or to continue asking that, or to assume like, if you don't end up with a child, then you can't have the happy ending,
Mm.
instead of leaving space for how do we redefine what can
Hmm.
bring a little bit of happiness back, even though it's not what was expected or desired.
Right.
Um, because it just becomes so harmful to just say, I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard many things said, like, you'll just try again, or like, it's gonna
Yep.
Mhm.
happen one day, just trust, or like whatever. Like,
Or it
um,
wasn't meant to be.
it wasn't meant to be. You're gonna love your freedom. Like so many things are said that are harmful, that
Hmm.
I think, yeah, just having a space where more of that can be discussed. But I always get mad at like the you got your happy ending. I mean, even in my experience of having given birth to two children, the assumptions of like, you must be thrilled, like you must be all this stuff. And my coming to working in perinatal mental health was based on my own experience of like being shocked by how much I struggled after I had children. And so even that assumption of like, you got what you want, look at your beautiful children. There were times where I was like, I can't. Like
Hmm.
I'm completely lost. And that's great that you think I'm having a great time, but I'm actually in hell for
Right.
I've been in hell for the last 3 months, or yeah, or any other facet of that. So I think we like to define that what somebody's happy family is.
Hmm.
And we do that based
Mhm.
on very colonial concepts of like
Absolutely.
cisgender hetero ideas. And yeah, there's just so much there to sort of deconstruct, and so much that gets lost in that narrative for sure.
Society isn't really comfortable with ambiguity and with grief, especially.
Not at
No.
all.
Mm. And
Or they're
it
comfortable with grief if you've lost somebody specifically, like a very
A
specific
right
physical, tangible person that someone could
person.
see.
Yes, not raspberries that you're throwing into the lake.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
it's hard it's hard for people to relate to that kind of grief, the loss of something that you can't see or touch or that you never had.
yeah.
Um,
Sometimes
Hmm.
the people that are going through the grief have a difficult time, not
Yeah.
have a difficult time grieving someone they haven't physically met. They
Mhm.
knew whether it's a concept, whether it's a dream, or whether it's a loss through a miscarriage, or they have
Mhm.
trouble. And and so the idea of then using a raspberry or
Mhm.
writing something down, like it all feels difficult for them. How do you reframe all of this, or how do you frame all of this to welcome anyone, even if they don't feel like they've got an artistic bone in their body? Like or is this the space for them? Because it may not be the space for everyone. I haven't been, so I can't speak to it. But for some people, the having that physical outlet of some kind of an artistic endeavor to engage different parts of the brain that aren't always being engaged as we work through something as all consuming as grief is, whether we like to admit that grief is all consuming, from our sleep to our food to our every part of our life. Um, if they had how I guess my
How? How?
how
oh, no,
How?
that's a great question. I think making creating a space where people can discover that for themselves.
Mhm.
So, and I've noticed in the workshop, I mean, I think our participants just happen to be a fairly artistic bunch. Um, just it just happened that way. But I have noticed times during the workshops where someone's like, oh well, I don't know what to write when you say that, or I don't know how to move, or
Mhm.
oh, someone said to me on the first day, oh, I didn't know there was going to be singing isn't my thing.
right?
uh,
I don't
and
even do it in the shower,
Yeah.
right?
And
exactly.
you said sound, make sound. To sing.
I think creating a space where it's like, here's some stuff you can do, here's some materials you can engage with, and just do
Mhm.
whatever you want or don't do anything. Like, I
Mhm.
think someone was having trouble in the movement and writing workshop, not knowing what to write, and Jess literally said, just write. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. And then the person did that. And then suddenly other words came. And they may not have come. And I would have been okay too. But,
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
just doing it, like even if you're not artistic at all, just
Yeah.
engaging it. And that's where having it guided by artists is really important. Being
Mhm.
guided, like, here's all this stuff and these things you can do.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
whatever comes of that is yours, is your own art. It doesn't have to,
Mhm.
go on a wall. It doesn't have to make sense to anybody else. So I
Mhm.
think that's how I would answer your question.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes down to we have artists who know how to facilitate that. Like we have
Okay.
artists who know how to facilitate the I'm
Yeah.
not good at this, and I think that that's really important. Like
Mhm.
I think I'm very fortunate to be in community with a number of facilitators that know what to do with that and know how to embrace it rather than get lost in like, well, they're not doing anything, or who know how to use like this movement prompt, my whole body's freezing, that would know how to use the freeze and be like, stay in the freeze, right? So it's
Mm.
also leaning into that, I don't know what to do. I think each of our facilitators also has their own tools um, for embracing that and allowing it to happen. And even simple things like, they said, "Oh, we're not singing," but Anna was very clear, like it's just like allowing a sound out
Mhm.
versus singing, right? Because we have very specific ideas of what singing means
Mhm.
versus like allowing your breath to start making a sound and then amplifying that sound.
Mhm.
Or like movement versus dancing, for example, because
Right.
with dancing, people are going to be like, if there's choreography, I'm out of here, versus just moving your body. And again, the facilitators sort of each of them has their tools for that, which I think is what's really beneficial about the artists that we have as well. Um, yeah,
I,
and sitting with it and being like, all right, like this is a stuck point. Like even just naming it and saying this is a stuck point.
Mhm.
Let's just like
yeah.
meet the stuck point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a funny little anecdote during Jess's workshop. So there was movement, and then we'd go and write about the movement and kind of this back and forth. And Jess identifies as a blind queer artist, and so she said straight out to us, "You can move however you want. I can't see you." So there was
There's
something
incredible freedom in that.
there's
Yeah.
incredibly freeing, especially for me because I hate movement in general. It's like my body doesn't like moving at all. And nobody had like I'd never had that kind of experience, like where, this person's identity and their very disability and the way that their body is in the world was actually an addition to how I experienced moving in that place. And like, it's one thing to be given permission to move however you want. It's another one to be told, well, I can't see you, so do whatever. And like
Yeah.
that in and of itself was like a fascinating sort of piece of it, right? And then,
Mhm.
she had us all turn away from each other actually, and we were all facing the wall, so we couldn't even see each other.
Right.
And it really highlighted for us, I think, that like through all these workshops, it's to create something for yourself, to
Mhm.
express yourself. It
Right.
is, but it's also being witnessed. So it's a very strange dichotomy that works.
Mhm.
Like you're creating something that's not meant to be on display, and yet other people are interacting with it and witnessing it and experiencing it in their own ways.
Yeah. And I mean, to tag on to that too, it opens up, like, just think, I'm very sad that I missed Jess's workshop. I'm hoping I can like take a workshop with her. Because Anna and I have been like trading off, but there's something also really beautiful because I think we all, as much as we all have sort of preconceived relationships to grief or like what is worth grieving, we
Mhm.
also have preconceived ideas of what making art
Yes.
means, like in
Right.
terms of the expectation. And that in this project, it's like redefining what that means. Like, yes, there is a symposium. Yes, we want to share something, but that's up to you what that looks like, if you even end up participating or if you end up more like somebody who's gathering for other people. But also, let's redefine this idea that art has to fall within, it has to check all these boxes to be considered art and to be witnessed by other people, to be shared
Yeah.
publicly. Um, I think that's part of it too, or at least that's like a lot of the times what I'm interested in working in is projects where it's like, well, let's also redefine what making art means.
Right.
Um, yeah, like I'm even thinking after Jess's workshop, we had Pre come in to do the zines, they brought an incredible selection of zines, not just that they had made, but also of like other artists and collaborators that they really love their work. So there was this incredibly diverse like selection of zines. And the one thing that somebody had pointed out was like, well, I feel like these zines and not all of them were joyful, but like a lot of them had some vibrant colors and things. And somebody had said, like, I'm struggling with matching this sort of joyous looking zine with what I wrote last week
Right.
because it was not joyous.
Right.
And Pri just had an incredible way of saying, well, let's look in these other zines as to like how people have done that, because this zine looks joyous,
Right.
but it's actually about a breakup, or it's actually about it's actually about losing someone's father, and sort of deconstructing how to use that dichotomy to say, well, maybe you're playing with the fact that these things are discordant, and how
Mm.
can that make sense in the zine? Maybe it's that you're purposely throwing people off by having these like really vibrant colors, and then all the writing is about sorrow, or the other way around. Because just because you wrote something that feels heavy doesn't mean you have to make like a dark, gloomy zine either. So yeah, so I just think of that too, where Pri had a beautiful way of sort of using examples, but then also talking through it with someone,
Hmm.
and saying like, oh, I'm hearing that you sort of feel like your zine has to be dark because your writing feels dark. Like,
Hmm.
can we push back against that? Because like maybe you want some sparkly stickers in there, and had
Yeah.
like these incredible, like colorful things, sparkly things. Um, and there was just there, and like you're allowed to enjoy the process of creating something, even if the reason you're creating it is incredibly sorrowful. And I
Yeah.
think that it was really cool to see how each person sort of went in terms of starting this zine process and like finding their own way in it. And again, like each of the facilitators has a really beautiful way of holding that too. So yeah, but it's really cool to see that too. And yeah, like nobody needs to see this. Like if you make a zine and you like, nobody needs to share, none of the participants are required to, they can still participate in stage 2 and not have anything they've created shown in whatever is publicly shared. Doesn't mean they can't participate in the co-creation process.
Right.
Because
Right.
co-creating doesn't mean that you have put an image or put your words or put something. It's
Yeah.
co-creating is also holding the space
Yep.
for
Mhm.
whatever is meant to be created to happen. So I think that's also allowing people to potentially take like more risks of just trying something that feels uncomfortable. They don't have to talk about it. They don't have to show anybody, even in the group, they don't have to
Yeah.
show anybody. It doesn't have to go into the final
Yeah.
piece that gets shown. It doesn't, right? So there's always still those options to say you can create and you don't have to share. You can create and you don't have to be witnessed. Um, or how beautiful that Jess would say, well, let's all also turn
Hmm.
so that even you can't see each other.
Hmm.
Like how beautiful that those movements existed only in that body, in that space at that moment.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's it. It doesn't have to live anywhere else. But maybe that person will continue to explore that movement, and maybe it'll
Hmm.
become something else. We don't know. Um, yeah. I don't know what I started with, but here we are. I'm like, what was my intention with starting that
I'm
ramble?
cognizant of the
Yeah.
time and letting
Yeah.
the two of you get back to your day, but before I let you go, beyond the symposium in April, which I'm looking forward to because I really enjoyed last year's symposium and I can't wait for this year's, what where do you see this going in the future? The two of you collaborating on this particular topic. Where do you see this going? And
Oh
or do
boy.
you?
I have a sort of answer to that. I can
Okay,
start.
okay, I'll
I'm
take a
like, do
sort of
you have an
answer.
answer? Because that
I
would be
have a sort of answer, yeah. I think seeing how much positive feedback we've gotten from not only the participants in the project, but the artists and the people that reached out with interest for the project and were so disappointed because they live so far away. I think it's opened up something. I think
Mhm,
it's shown us that there is a need
Mhm.
for more spaces like this.
mhm,
Um, and where that goes, I don't know. Obviously, creating spaces like this
mhm,
takes time and effort and money and grants and all those kinds of things.
Right.
Um, but I think a door has been opened to show us that people in our community, in the queer community, in the family building community, are hungry for spaces to explore these things that are invisible in ways that are maybe not that they're not traditionally explored. And so
Mhm.
where that goes, I don't know. Whether we're going to sit down and apply to a bunch of other grants, who knows? People have requested if we could do a virtual version for all the people far away, so we could explore how we could make that happen. I don't know. I think it's a lot of unknown, but there's like a doorway that's been opened. So that's my answer.
Yeah, we're back in the nebulous again. I feel like I mean, I've been working like in community settings for I'm realizing it's been a really long time. I think it's been like 17 years. And when it's within the arts and you are sort of dependent on funding, there's something really beautiful about just being like a door's been opened, very curious to see what will happen next, like whether it lines up to get more funding, or maybe there's like an organization that gets wind of it and wants to host it, like within their organization. We are partnered with Birthmark, and there's already conversations about like, is there a separate virtual group for this? Is there, I mean, when it comes to the capacity of the arts too, I've been able to learn so much about how you can build in legacy to a project, but also then build a project that can surprise you with its legacy.
Mm,
So I think of things like, if there is something that is visually displayed, we've already talked about, well, does it also live online?
mm,
Then if it lives online, then there's the capacity for it to continue being built on, for example. But I also think like, who knows what each participant is going to take from this and create themselves. So
Yeah.
I'm always like, let's see where the rainbow hits next, in terms of this becoming something else. Um, Maybe one of our participants will start their own at-home support group. Like, we have no idea. Um, but yeah, it feels like there's something that has alchemized, and um, it'll be really fun to see where that goes. And also that when participants really believe, I've had this happen in situations before where I've, like done because I've received this grant previously and sort of done this grant. And then like one of our participants is the one who suddenly is like, hey, I found this funding and I'm happy to apply for it. Will you, right? Like it sort of has a forward movement.
sure.
And I also like that it's that space of like having the symposium and then just like exhaling the whole of it, and
Hmm.
then seeing where the next thing pops up. Um, but certainly I think it's uh yeah, in terms of a door being open, it feels like there's a lot of beautiful energy in it. And if I think about it too much, then I might have too many ideas and I might overdo it. I've definitely gotten in trouble too, where I'm like, why did I say I would apply for 4 grants this round? Um, yeah, it feels like the same as when Anna and I met. It was actually a very easeful process of writing a grant. And that's always, for me, even if you don't get the funding, it's like, oh, I'm banking that one. Like, this was the
Right,
way I want grant co-writing to go. Or like, this is the way that I want project alchemization to feel. So
right.
even if we hadn't gotten the funding, yeah, so I'm always like, okay, that's the feeling. Like, where's that feeling next? Or where is it like feeling sticky and a little bit too hard? And then the symposium too. I mean, that to not just have people witness it, but to have whoever comes to the symposium start to think about maybe what their organization is not providing support for.
Mm.
Like even that, we never know. We
Mhm.
never know what might come from that. But already the participants are like, I told my friends about this. Like, and I think it's that they have to experience it, and then they're like, yeah, I told all my friends.
Fair.
And also, like, I think all of our participants have said they know other people who are in this same
Right.
stage, who are experiencing the same family of disenfranchised grief, even though it might not look like the friends who are in the group, right? So
Yeah.
perhaps this participant, they're really struggling with finding a surrogate. Well, maybe that's not what their friends are struggling with, but they're also in this process of like trying to build a family and don't have a child yet. So I think it's also I think it's that like, do I count in this? Like, I think people sometimes
Mhm.
question whether their stories count in something like this.
Yeah.
And I'm already feeling like the participants are understanding that so many things count as
Right.
like this type of experience.
Yeah.
Because like you said previously, people can be experiencing this grief and not even know that it counts or that it can fit somewhere or that it
Mhm.
can match with something that someone else is experiencing.
Mhm.
So that even to me is really beautiful for them to say, well, I talked to my friends about this and they realize like they totally would have been eligible for this group. I mean, even the word eligible is a bit funny, but
Yeah. But it would have
yeah,
been a good fit.
that it could have been a good fit, or it's something for them to be paying attention to how their friends are doing in the group and then potentially asking for more. Yeah. And I think that realization, it didn't surprise me at all that we had people from outside of Toronto or farther away that wanted to participate. Um, and those online formats can be so beneficial to folks when you do feel potentially like the only person in town who is having this
Yeah.
Yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
especially if you're living somewhere where like the queer community itself is potentially dispersed or um
Not visible in any
double
way.
feeling alone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. So how do people find out more? Where do they go? How do they learn more?
Uh, Probably the easiest thing to do is email info@familybuildingcanada.com. Those emails will go to me, and then we can share more. They can also go to uh, Birthmark's Instagram, which I believe is at Birthmark Support. I
Mhm.
could be wrong, but there is a post there that's pinned that has information about the workshops, the dates, and panels about the artists, I think.
Okay. Perfect. I
Yeah.
can throw that in the show notes both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely the best way. Most people have been communicating with us through
Yeah.
email.
Excellent. I want to thank you both for taking the time out of your day to chat with me about this and just to draw attention to a conversation that not enough of us have, not enough of us let ourselves feel comfortable having, but is absolutely critical for many people in the family building process. So thank you very much for honoring and respecting that piece of the whole family building journey.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
My pleasure. As a queer individual with colonial lineage, I want to first acknowledge the land upon which I live and work. Being from what is now known as Burlington, Ontario, I recognize the original ancestry of these lands as they span from Lake Ontario to the Niagara Escarpment and beyond. These lands are steeped in Indigenous history that benefits my community every day. The territory is mutually covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy, the Ojibwe, and other allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which I stand is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. The land dictates everything about our ways of being. Particularly, the land teaches us about fluidity. Concepts of the binary system and heteropatriarchy were imposed by the colonials who were, at the same time, removing children from their homes, families, and all that was familiar to them. These same children were divided by the only two prescribed binaries recognized by the settlers, and they were forced to conform to a performative, gendered falsehood. The land doesn't operate under binary thinking. It is diverse, complex, and unpredictable at times. Rather, the land holds us and all of our remarkable pasts and identities. Every organism and spirit has a purpose. It is from this understanding that I strive to live and grow. Thank you for joining me today on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or you know someone who might, if you're a professional who works in the capacity of helping people start and grow their families, and you identify as being a part of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community yourself, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We always have room for more stories to share, and there's always more learning to do.